of yesteryear. We're coming on Yud Chet Adar, that's 18th of Adar, and that is going to mark the Hilula of Hacham Saadia Tsafira, Zecher Tzadik Libracha, famous rabbi of his time, a rabbi spoken about, I believe, on various occasions before in the series. He was actually born in the year Taf Reish Zayin in 1847, and he passed away in the English year of 1933. We're talking about 93 years ago here from the time of recording, naturally on the 18th of Adar, Yud Chet Adar itself, respectively. Let's explore a few of the highlights of the famous rabbi's life, and we did actually record a few presentations within regards to other rabbis of that specific day in of itself. So it's actually interesting. His father was also Chacham, I believe, Rabbi Yosef, and he was born in the year 1847 in Teman. Remember, Teman of that point in time was a very, let's say, bastion place of Torah learning, Torah flourishing in of its own right, and huge amounts would actually take place at that point in time. Let's explore some information within regards to this place in of its own right. I think he would actually be a traveler going from city to city. I think especially in the Sana'a, that would be one of the places he would be working. I think the job he would actually do was writing books. He was writing, as it says over here, Hunadat bein ha'arim tanaim, v'tzana'a bitparnes ma'atakat svarim b'ktav yad. So he would be really dealing within regards to that, within writing and so on and so forth. I'm actually just looking at the moment as we speak at the preface of his book. I think it was published. I think Kesef Tzoref is the name of his book. So that's a very, very important work in of its own right, and something I think we've spoken about here beforehand. Now, I'm using over here the Homey website over here as a resource over here, but there's also on the teman.org.il website information within regards to him. It says Rabbi Saadia ben Yosef Tsafira nolad be'ir Tana'am. Apparently, he was born in an area called Tana'am. If I'm not mistaken, who Aviv Shlamari Yosef Tsafira Shitik I think in 1882 will be writing something in of itself. Actually, this website out there is a very, very good resource. He was a traveler from places, I think, for Tana'am, Sana'a, and Charaz, if I'm not mistaken, which is in the central place of Tehran. Huit Parnes mit Akta Sfarim, as we mentioned before, and Vahatik et Hasefer Zevach Toda V'dion Be'ir et Tana'am B'shna, I think Tafresh Gimel to Tafresh Chaf, between 1853 to 1860, if I'm not mistaken. So very, very interesting. So yeah, the book, the Kesef Tzoref Ma'in Ganim, Hasefer Hu Chidushim LeTorah Al Pi Pardes. It will actually be done, this book in itself, through the order of the Pardes, let's say the Gematriot and Notra Konim, really concentrating on the 5 books of Moses, which was Hasefer Kesef Tzoref, Vilu Porsho Drushim Lehespedim Nikra Ma'in Ganim. So I think he would actually have a son, Beno Mari Yosef, Alal Yerushalayim. Apparently his son would actually go to Jerusalem, I think in the 1890, Vosif Vashlim et חיבורו Aviv, Va'af Hatfis et Chumash Bereshit, in the year 1891, it will be printed. I think later on, maybe in the year 1932. Haskamot Kibel Lesefer, I think he would actually receive the Haskamot, let's say the recommendations to the book, on the 27th of Tevet in the year 1931. Marav Avram Cook, Umari Shalom Al-Sheikh Halevi, the great rabbis of there at that point in time. I think it was actually done on the 4th of Tishrei in that year in Taf Reish Tzadik Bet in 1931, respectively. Besever Hamudfas Omdim Kesef Tzoref Chavchet Amudim Ma'in Ganim V'Shiva Amudim Drushim Lespedim Shedarash Biyum Ptirat Zaken Anichbad David Ben Yosef HaKohen Nitfas B'Modorot Silum Yerushalayim in of itself. And I think there's more actually written over there. It says over there, La'alan kata makdamato. It's actually written inside Hakdama. Zasha la'Hashem tzadikim yavo'uvo. V'divreihem ele kesachek ma'oznei chachamim kemetebach achamat hachavit kemelakat achar aluktim achronim besof hayom. V'nei ka'of ya'of likro oto achidush Kesef Tzoref Ba'alil Eretz Keshmi V'Kinui Ken Hu Saadia Tsafira Im B'Tevot G Kesef Tzoref V'Od Yosef Im Arba Otiyot Kesef V'Hu Sham Avi Tzoref Mezukek Shivatayim Notnu Sukkah. Very, very interesting in itself. So you can see the great rabbis that will actually give like a haskama within regards to this book. Now I'm looking at the moment as we speak at the preface over here. There's a lot to actually chronicled over within regards to him. He's actually featured also on the HebrewBooks.org website, and much more has been said on various other places we have to point out also over here. Friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring for the time of the period of the Hilula, great Rabbi Saadia from Yemen, a rabbi that we've spoken about before. It's going to be his Hilula over here. We're on Yud Chet territory of the Hebrew month of Adar Yutet, to be precise over here. Great rabbi from Yemen of his time, and a rabbi that we've mentioned about here, and the author of the Mayan Ganim, the great Torah book of its own right. So if you're new over here to our community, welcome to our community over here. Don't forget to join and learn more, educate, and so on and so forth as we explore the life of great rabbi. And don't forget, we're actually recording this just before Shabbat Parshat Ki Tisa over here in Israel, the Torah portion of Ki Tisa. We're at the time period of war, so everyone please pray for Am Yisrael to be safe, and to just blessings from all over the world. That's something I can't stress enough over here at the moment that we all need. Okay, so as we said before, his book, the Kesef Tzoref, was on the 5 books of Moses, which was printed in Jerusalem through his son, Chacham Yosef Tsafira. So I'd like to know more information within regards to this great Rabbi Yosef Tsafira, and he was also a rabbi of his time, and one that is, brought down, I think, in various other places. Not much information on him, if I'm not mistaken, but we will try and find out more and see maybe we can do a presentation about him at one stage in time, about Chacham Yosef over here. We're going to explore a few of the highlights from his book in a minute. It says over here, Kesef Tzorech, kolel drushim nechmadim, mizahav umapaz. So it's quoting his full name, Rabbi Saadia ben Yosef Tsafira, Zecher Tzedek Lebracha. There's a Mayan Ganim, obviously. This was actually printed, I think, in Jerusalem in this point in time. It actually says it was printed through Raphael Chaim Kohen, if I'm not mistaken. So this book itself was published in 1931. I believe it contains as many as 251 pages, this Torah colossal work does. So that's very interesting. Let's explore a few of the highlights of the great rabbi's book over here, because there is actually a lot to state over here. There's another website at the Rot book over here. It says Hacham Harazi Magaona Mukbar Rabbi Saadia Bar Yosef Tsafira Nolad Be'eret Na'am B'Shebetaman Alali Eretz. So you'd make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael and live in Jerusalem, and pass away on the 19th of Adar in that year, I think in 1933, as we said. Well, I believe he was buried in Har Zeitim, the Mount of Olives burial plot, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it was actually Rabbi Yosef Tsafira would actually make Aliyah in the year Taf Reish Nun, and was one that would author his work. That's something that we have to point out over here. And as we just are just exploring, just using a couple of the websites over here, which is giving important information with regards to him. And there's actually on the Ma'orot website, it will actually talk about more within regards to his life, about the achievements that he had, and the various different great books of that window of time. So that's very, very interesting over here. So of this great Torah important book, I think many of the rabbis will actually quote this as a source in various other places. Anyway, let's check out a few of the highlights from this Torah colossal work of his. He teaches, one of the teachings says, Melamed remez machatzit shekel shebli hatzdaka honi met chai. So it's actually quite fitting, because we're talking about the Parshat of Ki Tisa this week. He's giving over a teaching from connected to this week's Parsha. I think it's actually in the Parshat Mishpatim section on page 88 over there. And once again, it was printed through Raphael Chaim Kohen in Jerusalem. We'd like to know a bit more within regards to the publishers and the printers, because I think it's just getting an idea of who the people were that were printing at that point in time. I think it's very important. So that's one teaching he gives away over here inside this book of his. Another teaching he will say over, just to point out over here as a source, he teaches Melamed Sha'osek b'Torah levado eino mo'il lo velo lezulato. This comes from Parshat Vayekel, which is next week's Parsha, from pages 77 to 78. Once again, from the same printer who this was in 1931. Another teaching of this Melamed Tshuva Sh'aseh Terach Ma'ava beno Shalach lo Ma'arzo. This is a teaching that actually comes from Parashat Lech Lecha. I think from pages 11 and 12 over there, once again printed from the same man over here. Another teaching of his Melamed Remez Lemoed Ashuv Le'ala B'Tamar. This comes from Parshat Vayera, I think in the book of Breshit. Actually, very much at the beginning of the book, I think pages 13 and 14, if I'm not mistaken. Another teaching of Melamed Lizaher Mina Machloket Leriv in Bnei Adam Chinam. Over here, it states over. This actually comes from Parshat Metzora, I think in pages 116 and 117, respectively, and this was printed in Jerusalem. One last teaching from this book: Melamed Shamaziyah Kedei Lotzia Davar Limato Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Zo Zaz Memano. This also is from Parshat Vayera, from pages 12 and 13 over here from this book. So you can see the importances from the book. We can actually attach over here on the actual thumbnail itself, like a just a copy of what the actual book, what it actually looks like, the first page in of its own right, because I think it's important to encapsulate and see actually what is actually illustrated over in that inside the books itself within regards to it. So who was a printer over here? Let's speak a word about the famous printer, Rabbi Chaim Cohen. He was seemingly a printer. He was a man of the congregation of Jerusalem. What's interesting was he was actually from Iran, if I'm not mistaken. He died in 1954. I hope we're going to record actually a video within regards to him. I think it's going to be very important. But seemingly he was also another famous person at the point in time. He was also Vad Halomi. He was a Beit Mishpat, if I'm not mistaken. It was part of the Sephardic community over there. So which is very, very interesting. So I think we've spoken about him before. I think this was a printer that would maybe bring about the book, but I would definitely have to, he was definitely a Persian Zionist. That's one thing I would have to point out, and would do a huge amount of things. I think this was the man, let's just say, that who would actually author, maybe be responsible for printing these books, but I will have to double check within regards to this also. So that is very, very interesting. So yeah, we're exploring the life of rabbis that were actually from Teman in that window of time, and we happen to be speaking about Rabbi Saadia over here, Rabbi Saadia Tsafira, who lived approximately about 86 years of age, if I'm not mistaken. And according to one opinion, 18th of Adar is his Hilula. According to another opinion, it is on 19th of Adar over there also. And was just a famous man of Jerusalem in of his day. So that's something very much we have to point out. Now, friends, anyone you've tuned in live, yeah, so it's actually interesting. So just going back to Raphael Chaim HaKohen, he was a printer, if I'm not mistaken. He was, I think he was most likely the person that printed his books. He was part of the Sephardi Community Committee. He had the Ohave Sion Synagogue in Zichron Tuvia neighborhood. I think this is a place that we visited on this channel already. He was actually the son of Mula Aaron HaKohen, if I'm not mistaken, another famous Persian rabbi of his point in time. I think he was married to Mrs. Bolisa, who was the daughter of Raphael Goldzlan, if I'm not mistaken. I think he would actually live very much in Zichron Yaakov neighborhood. And I think it was with Avram Moshe Lunks, or Avram Moses Lunks over there. They had a printing house, so he was working there, I think, in his youth. And he was living at the time period of the First World War, we have to point out. And I think he had a connection, if I'm not mistaken, with famous Rabbi Moshe Halevi Effendi, another rabbi who was the chief rabbi of Turkey at that point in time, who we've spoken about before. And he was very, very well traveled. I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was responsible for the Education House Committee of the Blind, if I'm not mistaken, was part of Zionist congresses of that specific day in of itself. And yeah, he was very, very interesting. But I think he was a printer that actually printed his works over in of its own. And yeah, hopefully at one stage, I think he's actually buried in the Beit Karot Sanhedrin in Jerusalem. I think he passed away in 1954 on the 4th of Tevet in 29th of December that year. And he brought about many other books of himself, including Mikra Kodesh and Avanim B'choma. And I think he was father of 7 children also. We're going now talking just about the printer over here of the books in its own right. But I'm not too sure about the family history itself of the Chacham we are speaking about today. I would like to know more. If any of you descend from the great rabbi, please send me an email now. I would love to know more information about the Chacham from Teman, Rabbi Saadia Tsafira, we happen to be speaking about before. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please subscribe now and join our community. So wishing all a Shabbat Shalom, take care, and thanks for watching.